Hey, can you believe it? We made it to the crown chakra.
Awesome. Awesome.
I
It's
would
the
like
crowning episode, right?
to, right?
Mhm.
I would like to thank you in advance, Kevin, for
Mm,
hanging out with us these past once a month, every
absolutely.
Sunday, and doing this. It's been of great benefit to me
Mm,
and hopefully to those who've watched. Well, I know it has because I've gotten some great reports.
excellent.
And then to those on the replay, may they benefit too. And I made a
Absolutely.
little playlist so that when people go to my channel, they can click on the playlist that just has all the chakras right there. They don't have to
Ah,
go flipping through my videos. So,
excellent. That's
yeah,
exciting. Awesome.
yeah, it is exciting.
Yes. Well, it is a
So,
pleasure. It's an honor to have been a part of it, and it's such important information to kind of give context to these balls of energy that we talk about as chakras, but to really make some practical, inroads into how it affects our lives.
mhm. Yeah, in the I agree. And in the description of this video, I wrote that, not everything that we talk about on these videos is um classical or traditional per se,
Mm,
um, coinciding with the Vedas, but
mhm,
nonetheless, it's very, it's very useful and helpful. And
mhm.
I think the proof is in the pudding, really.
It is indeed.
Yeah. Um. Well, my questions are kind of all over the place, so I wanted to see if I could
Yeah.
give some order to them. Well, it is a bit of a review. So we went from the root, now we're at the crown, and we
Mhm,
talked about the root as being subphysical, and
mhm.
then the first chakra as the physical, and
Second,
then,
yeah. Mhm.
sorry,
Yeah.
first
Mhm,
chakra subphysical, second
mhm.
chakra physical,
Yeah.
third chakra emotional,
Mhm,
fourth chakra temporal, but I
mhm.
think it should be switched to atemporal.
Oh, okay, alright. It's an interesting word. I mean,
Yeah,
it is one that we use,
yeah,
but yeah, it was kind of fascinating when that was guided, this
yeah.
temporal.
I mean, because I was curious about it, and I looked up the definition of temporal. And it says it has to do with time, but since this is out of time, not it's out of time and space. I thought atemporal might be a more
Absolutely.
useful word. And
Yeah.
then so atemporal, then mental.
Mhm.
And what did we say this one was? The sixth?
Yeah, I mean, it has a lot of different names, sixth, third eye, right? But this body is subtle, so it's basically
Subtle body.
like in the Vedas, what they talk about as the subtle body.
Yeah. They also call it so I've been brushing up on the koshas.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah, and in the koshas, I mean, they have a whole different. So they say that the koshas they call sheaths, and it can get confusing because they
Mm,
call them bodies, but there's another system where there's only three bodies. So the
right.
five sheaths or bodies are inside these three larger bodies, right? So
Yeah.
get kind of complicated. So just sticking
Mhm.
with sheath, the first and second chakra in the Vedas, the first and
Yeah.
second chakra are the food sheath or the physical body,
Mhm.
and then the second chakra, so the first and second chakra are that,
Mm,
and then the third chakra they call the energy sheath,
mhm.
and then they call the heart chakra the mental sheath, and then they
Mhm.
call the throat chakra um ooh the mental sheath, the intellectual sheath,
Yeah, there's
the
a
wisdom
discernment there.
sheath.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry. These are both bliss body. These are both bliss body. And wisdom. I'm forgetting the throat one. But anyway, we don't need to go into the Veda stuff because we're doing different stuff here today.
We are
So
indeed.
it's so new that you can see I don't have it memorized, but it's been fun, and I've been tuning in, during my meditation, just to presence those bodies.
Mhm.
With doesn't matter what system you're working with. It's good to tune in. I feel it's helpful.
Oh, totally.
Um,
Mhm.
it helps you access more of yourself. You're like, okay, I'm tuned into my physical body, and now
Hmm.
I'm going to tune into my energetic body and my mental body, and so forth. And wow,
Yeah,
it's amazing what happens when you do that.
it really is. I mean, it's like all we talk about with intention as well. It's like we're intending, so we're putting focus into. And so, like I said, just as opposed to balls of energy that we may or may not know what they do, we can have some words and some ways of constructing, like this is what constructs this thing we live in. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it is a really, I always think of it as developmental. I always kind of have a developmental bent to my to my practice. And so
Yeah.
it's like, we develop through these different chakras. And this astral body, this crown chakra, basically has it's very interesting because when we put it in the context, like you said, of connecting the root and the crown, then we're saying basically that if that's developmental, that these are early developed, the crown and the root, that we're developing basically these chakras. And we don't typically think of the crown as something that develops as an infant, but it's kind of interesting to think about when we kind of look at, this root and crown are being developed with these very young children. And then we see them, like looking like, where are they looking? Right. So,
Mm.
and it's like, what kind of connectivity are they making there? So,
Mhm.
kind of brought some context into that too, our container basically.
So the root chakra develops between birth and 7 years. And so
Hmm.
you're saying that simultaneously the root chakra is developing at that
Yeah.
same time?
Hmm. Yeah. That's the theory. That's the guidance that I get. Yeah.
That's interesting,
Hmm.
because when you think when the baby is born, that fontanelle is
Exactly.
right where
Yeah.
the the chakra is.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's totally open.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So that is kind of part of the guidance. Like, why is that? And then, getting into that, how we're connecting using that figure eight through the heart. So how we're feeding this information from astral body into sub-physical body, all of this microbiome basically that is creating health
Mhm,
within this infant's body. And so it's like, yeah, it is a fascinating way to think about this, that that it isn't the crowning or the pinnacle of our development. And so it's like, here we have reached the crown. It's like, if we're thinking of it in this way, that's our container.
mhm,
Yeah. So it's an interesting way to kind of put it in context for yourself. And even when you're looking at a young child and seeing like they're experiencing a realm that we don't experience. So
mhm.
they have things that are open, like right to this crown, that they're getting information, and we've already created filters for that in our adult lives. And so we most likely are not seeing that.
What's also really interesting is that they're not eating for the first 6 months. I mean,
Hmm.
they're breastfeeding, but they're not eating
Hmm.
solid foods.
Yeah.
So they're building up their microbiome for the first 6 months with just breast milk,
Hmm. Yeah.
or in some cases formula, and
Hmm.
hopefully not GMO formula, because that doesn't make
Exactly.
a good microbiome. But,
Mm-mm.
75% of all of our energy goes towards digestion.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
blood sugar and all sorts of things play into
Hmm.
that, which
Absolutely.
can distract you from receiving messages from source. So the fact that they're
Definitely.
not having to digest as much, um,
Hmm.
and it's and yeah, it just says a lot. And my mind is going in a million different
Hmm.
directions
Yeah.
thinking
Mm,
about it. But that
absolutely.
connection between root and crown
Hmm.
and the
Yeah.
microbiome, and the fact that they don't eat for the first 6 months, and that their energy can be used for other things like growth and development rather
Hmm.
than digestion, and
Yeah.
that clear connection to source. Very interesting. So so we're calling this the astral body. And so
Hmm.
we've in the past said, okay, this is um, the first chakra is the realm of the elementals, and the second chakra is Archangel Raphael's realm,
Hmm.
the angelic
Yeah.
realm, and so forth. So, what realm is this?
Ancestors. So it's interesting to think about. So
Mm.
it's, so then we kind of get into, again, that connectivity of, this elemental realm. which has an ancientness to it on this particular planet that we live on, like the Fae and these different characters that we think of as nature based or earth based, and then we go into the ancestors where this entity named Milru, or one of the seven sisters of the Pleiades, is the governance, or the entity that kind of governs this astral realm. And then thinking of ancestors as, we have an ancestry that we understand, right? So the kind of conventional archaeological wisdom. And then we have, quite a bit of information that shows that there are much older cultures that actually weren't just, living in caves and small, communities, nomadic tribal folks, that there really were established cultures. And so when I asked the guides that, basically I got this kind of 100,000 year template where there's been about 5 ages. And that kind of matches with the Hopi and a lot of the cultures that say that cultures have arisen and fallen. And they do that in about an 18 to 20,000 year period. It's probably exact, I would imagine. But that's kind of the energy that I get from the guidance, is that about every 18,000 years, a culture will kind of go through its maturation process and fall away, and another one will take its place. And so I think over the last 100,000 years, we can think of Lemuria, or the continent of Mu. And, that's kind of Hawaii, tallest mountains in Hawaii, that whole idea that, if this were, the island itself was the top of the mountain. So if that floor of the ocean were risen up to match our sea level, then these would still be the tallest mountains on the planet. And so this continent that they talk about of Mu, with this culture of Lemuria, has, in this context here, is about 100,000 years. So about from 100,000 to about 80,000 years ago. And that matches with Atlantis. And so there's a lot of information. I think there's probably more information on Atlantis and Atlantean.
Does this correspond to, so you often hear me mention Gigi Young, and
Mhm.
she talks about, that there are 7 epochs, and
Yeah,
that right
makes
now
sense.
we're in the 5th epoch. So she talks
Hmm.
about the Polarian epoch, the Hyperborean epoch,
Hmm.
the Lemurian epoch, the Atlantean epoch, and the post-Atlantean epoch. And she
Hmm.
says right now we are halfway through the post-Atlantean epoch. Does that
Hmm. I
ring
think
true
that,
for you?
that fits too. I mean, it's definitely from this place. Like the visual that they give me is that this culture of Atlantis and Lemuria existed simultaneously, like we are doing, right? So we definitely see the polarity of who we are as humans right now,
Hmm.
that there is kind of a leaning towards the softer, receptive, healing teacher, right? This kind of teacher healer archetype that I talk a lot about and mostly work with. And then this kind of other end of this more mental body, so more technology, crystal based technology, and which we still live primarily, we're talking on a crystal based technology right now, right? So it is, if we think of it like that, they're not very separate, they're basically existing together in their own polarity. And so that these polarities of what we would think of as a right brain and a left brain, that's kind of how we put it together as well. And so how the bringing together of those is really the key. That's basically what this work is about, is to bring those worlds together as opposed to keeping them in their separate realms. And yeah.
And so who is this Milru person? Or
Yeah,
being?
it's interesting, right? I think when you look at the Greek tradition is what brought the name forward, and when she came through to me, the name was Milru, and I get these things, that just kind of come into my head, and it's like this name, Milru, Milru, Milru. It just was repeating. Like, I don't know what that is. The closest I could find, basically, in literature is the Greek tradition and the Seven Sisters, and that entity in that is Muru. So it's pretty close. So I would say, I don't know if I was mishearing it or if that's actually the name. So
Milru. Well,
yeah.
you do hear moo. You hear
Hmm.
about moo a lot.
Yeah. And I kind of get it, like this, what I call the many Marys. She's one of the Marys. And so, in our current, Western culture, basically we have a a representative of Mary, Mary Magdalene, Mary, Mother Mary,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
So this entity is like that, right? So it basically has that same energy.
mm. Um, hmm. Well, I not now because I'm thinking also of the third chakra that's governed by the Divine Mother, and
Hmm.
then the fifth chakra that's governed by the Divine Father,
Hmm. Yeah.
and then here we are at the Divine Mother again.
Well, I think that, this is where there is, because they all have a polarity, right? So I know there is a masculine component to that, just like, in all of these other chakras.
Mhm.
So this feminine entity that comes through as the governance of the ancestral realm
Mm,
is, but definitely in these other chakras, they also have that same polarity.
mm,
So just thinking of it as polarity, like each one of these chakras is, we focus on one of the entities, but they all have a balance point as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so ancestors, and then if people were interested, they could look up Mu or Muru.
Hmm.
In does Muru have a you know how often because the Greeks borrowed a lot from
Oh
the
yeah.
Egyptians. Is
Hmm.
there an Egyptian counterpart to Mu that you know of or have looked into?
Yeah, I think that, the probably keeping it in context, it would be Isis. So that's probably the closest, but it could be, there are other powerful feminine entities in that tradition as well.
Isis
So
makes sense.
yeah. Yeah. So I think that, when we look at it, it's like if we put it into each one of the cultures, Phoenician culture, right? So this Sumerian culture also had this same. So like the ones that we have archaeological knowledge of, right? We have some availability to see the stones and the things they made, and then saying that there has been disruptions on this planet over this 100,000 years, and there's no guarantee that it's much longer than 100,000 years, right? It's just that those are the containers that essentially they were guiding me to kind of give us context for ancestry and say
Mhm.
that. And the main point, really, probably here for us and the listeners is we've been in all of these cultures. So our soul has incarnated into each one of these cultural, you know, templates of 18,000 years. So it's been developmental as well, that
Mm,
we've kind of moved through each one of these developmentally. And that's why, like past life, when we talk about past life stuff, or concurrent life, when we understand the dimensional reality, and that's one of the ways to kind of touch into the astral realm as well, to kind of give it something to hold on to, because we talk about astral travel or astral, right? So I mean, we have this word in relationship to meditative practices, healing arts practices, and if we think of it as astral would be, I leave this physical body behind and I travel where, right, to a different dimension. So I can travel dimensionally without this human body. So again, that's, the brain kind of starts to melt when we talk about these things, but it is one way to think of astral travel is I go into a meditative state and I leave this behind. So I leave most of these chakras behind, and hopefully with a sitter, right? Because astral travel requires somebody sitting with the body and making sure that it's not getting inhabited by other entities. So that's another thing to talk about. But this astral travel would be, I can go to different dimensional realities. So it's not time travel, but it is moving this consciousness, so awareness into consciousness into a different dimension.
So is the seventh chakra with us when we
Yeah.
in the dream time?
Yes, absolutely. So this is where, we kind of think of what we're experiencing in deep dreamless sleep is very likely the same as astral travel. And because we can't really bring that other dimensional information back into this one without going crazy, then, it's like the forgetting of coming into this human life.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we're just basically saying that, this is what we're doing. That's why it's restorative, I think. That's why deep sleep is the most restorative sleep to the physical body, is I do believe that we're actually doing healing work in these other dimensions when we're doing
Mm-hmm.
that. And so it's a way to understand that.
Makes sense, because certainly we know that the physical body is restoring itself, and rejuvenating during
Hmm.
rest time.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, um, oh, what was I going to say? You're talking about astral travel. Oh,
Yeah.
well, so lots of people tend to think of we clarified this last week, but lots of people think, because this is called the third eye chakra, they associate it with the pineal gland, and
Hmm.
it's actually associated with the pituitary. The
Hmm.
pituitary and the pineal have a relationship,
Oh, yeah.
and the pineal gland has a light receptor on it, and it is so we've talked about how in the chakra system there is a corresponding endocrine gland
Hmm.
chakra, and with this one it's the pineal gland. So
Hmm.
can you help us understand more about the pineal gland and also its relationship to the pituitary?
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely think that it's a lot of kind of translation, because that's what we were originally from the ancient teaching. So we'll take that back into the Vedas and say third eye. And because it sits in the center of the head, this basically was an assessment, like this is where it's connecting. So the light must be coming through here. So light comes through eyes, so it must be coming through here. The reorientation from the guidance that I was getting is that the photoreceptors, and this actually matches with some of the science, is that these photoreceptors are on the top of this pine cone shaped, this tiny pine cone in the middle of our head. And so pineal, right? So,
Yeah.
or pineapple, right? Also could be associated with that. So it's like, this thing has photoreceptors on the top. And so that basically means that we're taking light through the crown. And like we've talked about with being outside on a starry night and taking that ancient light from these stars, as that enters into our crown with information. And so that this is a translator of information that translates this ancient starlight information into our chakra system. And then, we're always kind of putting that context of energy coming through the crown into the heart and up through the root into the heart. So that this is the process, as we're always gathering that information from earth and sky, Mother Earth, Father Sky, right? So we're always pulling that in. And so it does make more sense that, getting that kind of light exposure or not light exposure, that's another important thing, because the endocrine quality of this would be melatonin. And melatonin is the substance that helps us fall asleep, and about a thousand other things that we don't totally even know yet, because it's so interrelated with the pituitary and with the thyroid, right? That this information coming through and translated through the pineal then goes to this pituitary, which has at least 6 or 8 different functions with hormones. It's incredibly complicated, and right. And so that's where all that information is coming from, the pineal.
Hmm.
And so, like, I usually recommend in sessions that we reset the pineal. And
Mm.
so that to me is just going out on a starry night, like a moonless starry night, or getting in a room that is completely dark, so that that photoreceptor basically clears itself.
Mm.
And so we get into a complete darkness, which we're not often in this Western culture now, for sure. There's
Mm-mm.
always ambient light in rooms. There's always, right? So even at night, why do people have trouble falling asleep? Because there's too much light. And so basically that receptor is still receiving light. And so it's receiving different messages from different kinds of ambient light, the clock, all these different things. And so
Electronics.
absolutely. so so that's where, we can kind of take that into the practicality of, I'll take melatonin, but I could just reset this pineal and I could start making it again. So a lot of times it will reduce in us, so we won't make as much of it, and then we'll have trouble falling asleep. It doesn't keep us asleep, but as we realize through our sleep cycle, we have to wake and fall asleep many times. And so it actually is functioning throughout the night. It will come into a waking state, an alpha state basically of waking in the night, and then that melatonin will kick back in and put us back to sleep.
So, you know how you taught us during the integrity process, which we'll discuss at the end,
Mm-hmm.
that repeating, I can
Mm-hmm.
21 times in the morning and 21 times at night
Yeah.
will help you generate some dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
what can I say
Yeah.
that will help me generate some melatonin?
Absolutely. So it kind of fits into the words that we use. So the governance and what this chakra is all about is gratitude. And so the phrase is, I am grateful.
I am
And
grateful for this
mhm,
precious human life.
absolutely. So we start with that, and then we can shorten it just to, I am grateful, I am grateful, I am grateful, I am grateful. And that can also, right, that's what I've measured as well to help that pineal come back online and produce that melatonin and that cascade basically. So working with the body, to deliver essentially all of this chemical compound that is
Mhm.
incredibly important for our health. So yeah, so we start with that. So here at the pinnacle or the crown is gratitude, that we've reached this place of being grateful. And then a lot of times I'll kind of further that into the expression or kind of the lived experience of gratitude is generosity. And I'm always cautious when I'm talking to healers, because healers are very generous people, right? Generous with time, generous with energy, generous, right? So that this generosity has a quality to it that isn't enmeshed. So that's a really important part. Like, I'm giving all the time. Don't tell me to give more. I'm giving all of myself. It's like,
Yeah,
no,
it's not
that's
about overextension.
exactly right. So
And
we want that to be in alignment for sure.
yeah, and having the boundaries of not overextending is generosity toward yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean,
And
that comes back to the self.
this, I am grateful, I mean, isn't it a great way to end the day by lying down, sort of reviewing your day and,
Yeah.
looking at what are all the things that you're grateful for. You're grateful that you had a bed to sleep in and a roof over
Hmm.
your head and clothes to
Yeah.
put on your back and
Yeah.
food to cook and put in your belly, and maybe you had a tea date with a friend, or you got to read
Hmm.
a chapter of one of your favorite books, and just kind of go through the
Yes.
line and make a list, in your head, and then go into that mantra.
Hmm.
I'm grateful. I'm
Absolutely.
grateful. I'm grateful.
That's perfect. Yeah. And I definitely say that, this is like, there's a lot of gratitude journals. Um, there aren't a lot of generosity journals. And so, right, to take that into the place of adding to what you're talking about here and saying, this is where I was generous today. This is where I shared in integrity, in balance, and how that came back to me. And so, how that other people were generous with me, and how that back and forth kind
Mm,
of really fills that out to this gratitude, generosity, place where, and again, we can write these things down, we can think them, we can meditate on them. Any way that we can have that experience will bring us back. And that's why we're making that connection to, it's not just feeling, it's not just saying I'm grateful, it's feeling I'm grateful, and then really applying that into the body and noticing that when we have that chemistry, what happens, just like the dopamine, just like the serotonin, just like the oxytocin, right? So these chemicals are the result of actually feeling those states. And so that's where we're kind of making that connection and saying that, as I say them, they have a vibration. Words have a vibration. So we understand that in spell work or in things where we say intentional words, and, in affirmation work, that's kind of ancient as well. And when we say that this is an affirmation, it has an actual structure to it that does something very physical in the body. So words are math, and math is basically, what makes this chemistry. So if we think of it in that way, it's like it
mm,
does translate. So it really does translate into our experience.
wow. Yeah, I never thought about numbers and geometry as translating into body chemistry, but now I have another place to
Mm, yeah, definitely.
go. So, you taught me, and I do it on a regular basis. I put a drop of neroli, which
Hmm.
uh, is Sanskrit for orange blossom,
Hmm.
and I put a drop of that on my crown chakra. It smells divine too.
Mm, yes.
Um, is that too activating at night? Is it best to put it on in the morning, or does it matter?
Yeah, it's for different people, but I would say, did we recommend one for you? Was it
Uh,
night?
you mean for nighttime?
Yeah.
No, I don't put it on at night, but I know that we've been talking about nighttime and melatonin, and
Hmm.
I'm introducing it now, so I'm like wondering,
Yeah.
I think of putting it on in the morning when I
Yeah,
put the
totally.
essential
Mhm.
oils on, but I don't know that I'd want to put it on at night. But yeah, if you
I
wanted to
agree.
pick one to put on at night, I would
Yeah.
take your
Yeah, no, I definitely think that, your recommendation as well. So I think of it as the, um, I grew up in an orange grove in Phoenix, Arizona, and so basically we had 21 orange trees and grapefruit trees. So there were times of the year where this was very prevalent, this orange blossom smell. So, and I think of that as morning as well. So I will often do that. Though one of the ways we can translate it into why we're doing it is as a protection against people being envious of us or jealous. And
mm,
that's the negativa basically of this chakra would be envy or jealousy. And also if we feel that we are envious or jealous of another or their situation. And so we can kind of use this as a way to kind of remind the chakra to be in the gratitude and the generosity. And that would be the balance point of the envy and jealousy. And so that's another way that we use it, is to use this oil specifically to have that aromatic experience, and also the actual oil being for protection. And so, and then oftentimes we don't know that that's happening, so that, we are actually at the effect of people being envious. And I put those two words together just kind of like a way to understand, like, usually when I'm projecting envy, that would be jealousy. And so we kind of use these words as a back and forth. And
yeah,
so, right, so that we can kind of, we use them a lot, envy and jealousy. But if it's directed for me, it's jealousy. If it's directed at me, it's envy. And so that's kind of how the guides have organized that. But we use them, in our language, we use both of those words in a very similar way.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay. So how about some practical things? As far as, say somebody wants to cultivate their crown chakra and
Hmm.
work with it and grow into it, and so then what might be sorry, I dropped my phone, which has my questions on it. What
Yeah.
might be some useful things that they could do, either foods that they could eat, yoga poses they could
Hmm.
do, breathing exercises,
Totally.
um etc.
Yeah. I made a few notes, and I definitely think that if we think of, like, we're thinking of the hormone and thinking of melatonin. And so this would be a way that you can kind of think into, yes, there are ways that I can produce melatonin myself. And so, like we said, this kind of getting into a very dark room or out in starlight. And then the pose basically in yoga is Tadasana. So this kind of standing corp pose, right? So it's like, just really practicing that pose. I mean, in my yoga teacher training, we were supposed to do two asana poses and teach them. And I did Tadasana and Shavasana because I really feel like
Mm.
those are just, this kind of essence of this practice. And ones that I could do, of course, I can stand up and lay down. And but really, when you're thinking about standing up, it really is an interesting exercise, how to pull in the bandhas and how to, basically create these seals and bring yourself into this circular golden sheath of who we are. And, when these chakras are all aligned and balanced, this becomes a golden egg. And so how do we stand within that? How do we stand with honor, nobility, right? How do we sit with a straight spine? All of these things. Like, when you really think about standing up, I stood in line for an hour and a half to get some noodles during a baseball game earlier in the week, and I was thinking a lot about standing up. And so this was my Tadasana pose, and how am I being in this line, and how am I, working my system essentially while I am challenged in a big crowd of people. And right, so I mean, this is real practical stuff. It's like, what am I visualizing? How am I being in this place? How am I staying out of my reactive process, and this isn't fair, and I'm missing the game, and right, so all these good things that I could be thinking and did, and then went back into my practice. And so this was, became humorous actually, that the experience that I had, but definitely standing in a line is the place to do this, to practice Tadasana, to
And
say
how do you not get jealous of the person that's at the head of the line getting their noodles?
Right, so it's all there, it's all compacted into that experience of a baseball game with a lot of people, and how do I exist within this. And I'm somewhat of a recluse here in my little my little office area that I live most of my life in. And so it's like, it is a practice of just getting out and relating and using these tools while I'm out. And so, like you were mentioning, this idea of gratitude, we talked about that. We talked about the neroli. We didn't talk about the stone. So, fluorite. So, fluorite is a really important stone. And it's kind of this stone that has purple and green. It really is kind of a magical looking crystal. And so I think that, this is another one that, I've actually, in body work, I've placed basically fluorite on the crown. I use fluorite. I hold it there sometimes if there's a headache or there's congestion or there's something that I think that, can be relieved within this head area. So I'll use it that way a lot. A lot of times I'll get headaches, back of the neck on either side. I'll use it for that as well. And so I'll hold it in a particular hand based on, what I think's going on and what I need. And I'll keep it on my altar. So basically, these stones that we've talked about, right, that we've kind of gone through, I keep on my altar. And so, like, when we're talking about that root chakra ruby and this crown chakra fluorite, or the carnelian of the second chakra and the amethyst of that third eye, this yellow citrine of this solar plexus, and the turquoise in the throat, and then coming all into that green, that green tourmaline basically, or I use citrine as well, green citrine. And so there's a bunch of them that can be heart also. The pink, right? So the pink stones, so any of that kind of pink hue can be used for the heart. I think of actual
Rose
physical
quartz.
heart. Yeah, rose quartz. And so I think of that as being very physical heart, like if there's really stuff going on in the actual physical heart. And then as that heart chakra goes out, it becomes more green. And so basically kind of that is the color of that kind of more eighth chakra. So that's kind of how I think about that. But those stones are really critical, and they're really important. I know that I've got this huge stone Bible right next to my Wheels of Life book, so that, these two kind of Bibles of, this energy work, and how, and that's definitely a recommend as far as chakras in general, Wheels of Life. And that would be Anodia, I think is her name, Anodia
Yeah.
Judith. Yeah. And
But
so
if somebody just Googles, you know, chakras, wheels of life, it'll lead them right to the book. Oh, and since I have been writing this chakra series on my blog,
yeah.
and I always include our video with the appropriate chakra. So starting tomorrow, I'll write about the crown chakra, and then I have
Awesome.
this video. So perfect
Excellent.
coincidence or coincidence.
Yeah.
But my friend who's been a yoga practitioner and teacher for going on 30 years now, studying, practicing, teaching.
Mm-hmm.
She introduced me to a book called Kundalini Yoga for the West.
Fascinating. Okay.
And her name, if you Google it, her last name is Radha. Swami Sivananda Radha.
Okay.
Rhada.
Okay.
It's been a good book.
Excellent.
Yeah. I like it. Um, wow. And so, I mean, I'm thinking about crown chakra and connection to source. I mean, we can connect to source through any chakra, but
Hmm.
what do
Yeah.
you have to say about connecting to source through our crown chakra? And even you think about, like when you see pictures of
Hmm.
realized beings, they have this halo,
Hmm.
or they might have a full aura, but I just really think of the crown chakra as being, like
Hmm.
connected to the divine or to source or to the everything or however you want to say it.
Absolutely, right? I mean, it's how we think of, and this and a lot of that teaching that has come over to the West has heavily focused on that our connectivity to source comes through the crown. And this guidance kind of early on for me brought it all back into the heart. And so basically that information's coming in through the crown and up through the root into the heart and then going out into source. And then we're
Mm,
gathering source energy back in and sending it
mm,
back out. And
mm,
so that process basically is, and when you look at some of the older Tibetan, some of these teachings, the channels, and it's like we don't have to dive deep into there, but just understanding that there's inner, channels in, channels out, that kind of stuff, and
yeah.
how this kundalini, like you just mentioned, this serpent shape basically of the DNA, how that is shaped. And that really overly simple. That's what I did when I first started teaching this is just visualize heart in the center and then visualize the root and the crown being connected and make it look like an eight. So that basically the center of that eight is in your heart.
Yeah.
And so basically that energy moving in that way down, coming back up, right? So that energy of that eight is the container. And so now that we're thinking that way, we're thinking more like energy coming in. So that would be masculine crown through into the heart, feminine from the lower chakras into the heart. So that this masculine and feminine meet in this place in the heart.
Mhm.
And that is source, right? So that we're taking in source energy, translating it through our translator chakras, and then sending it back out. And
Mhm.
that's like when we were mentioning pranayama or breath. This is one of the ways that I kind of activate sleep when I'm ready for sleep is I breathe in 8 and exhale 16. And I'll do that with that same visualization of bringing energy from below and above into the heart. So that 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and then out. And so we can practice that if you want. But basically, that, bringing energy in. So it's like 4 above, 4 below. So 8 in, 16 out. And that takes practice. You can't just like in the middle of the day just start breathing 8, 16. It's, you got to kind of tune in, get some breath into the lungs first. And then they'll kind of practice that deeper breath a little deeper, make it 4, make it 6, and then that inhale. So that breath and a couple of those will really activate, and it should activate a yawn. So, as you're wanting to come into a sleep state, then that is the way to do it, and activating out of that sympathetic into that parasympathetic.
So do you always breathe out through the mouth? You don't do it through the nose?
I do actually do it different, just kind of, I'm always kind of tuned into the body, like what feels best.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And that's also a way to come into out of the sympathetic into the
Mhm.
parasympathetic, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So
And
that's really, yeah.
so if we so it's relaxing
Hmm.
and it's
Yes.
parasympathetic. Now,
Mhm.
if we're meditating and we're getting a little tired, we could do the
Yes.
opposite of that, couldn't we?
Totally.
We could
Absolutely.
breathe in for 16 and breathe out
Mhm.
for 8.
Absolutely. Yes.
So
Yeah.
it
And
doesn't
that's
have to
always good
be
to know.
16 and 8, but it
Yeah.
has so if you're
Hmm.
trying to relax, you want the exhale
Hmm.
to be twice as long as the inhale. If you're trying to stimulate yourself, it's the other way around.
Hmm. And actually, people will report that too with sleep, that they'll get overly tired, so tired they can't fall asleep. And so they'll go so far into that parasympathetic that they kind of out of the zone of sleep. And so that's another way to kind of think about that. If we're just overly tired, to do some activating breath, kind of bring some activation, some chi prana back into the body, and that can actually help us to sleep as well. So it's an interesting way to think about balance, right? It's all about that sweet spot or balance.
So
Yeah.
if you're so, you know how some people say, I'm so like tired and wired, which one would you
Hmm.
do? Is that when you would do that?
Yeah, definitely. So, you can try them and just say, like, if I don't yawn when I do two of those 8-16 breaths, then I go the other way. And so, typically I would say as we're reaching out into this community, most people are overactivated. And so most people are still too sympathetic. And so we want to pull that into the para more, and that will actually help, to get into that rest and digest place. So it is very appropriately named. And I'll do this sometimes too, where if I'm super activated and I'm eating, that I'll do this breath. I'll do this parasympathetic breath to get into that digestion place so that I can actually digest what I'm eating or listening to, right? Another way to do that too.
Yeah.
My calm, relaxing voice is putting you to sleep right now, then do a little activating breath.
Yeah, ever since you said yawn.
It's amazing, right? This is a fascinating thing that we do. Like, somebody sneezes, we sneeze, yawn, you say the word yawn, yawn. The body is just ready to rest always. It's like, oh, it's time to rest. And so yeah.
They say that well, I don't know who they are, but I've heard it said that
Mhm.
um you can always tell a narcissist, like a true full-blown narcissist, if you yawn and they don't.
Ah, I love that. That's really great.
So
Yeah, so they're
then
just
you might
not.
want to run the other way.
Mhm. I think that's a great technique. It's like early
Yawn in
on.
front of somebody, and they don't
It's like,
yawn, you're like, okay, nice knowing you.
that's great. I love that. Yeah,
Um,
because it is resonance, right? So if somebody isn't resonating with you, there's a
yeah.
reason why.
Well, it's
Yeah.
also, empathy in part, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So it's just being in that bubble and, really being in that space. Like the body says, yeah, rest. That sounds good. So yeah. And, do we really know what that is? Like what is really happening? You know, so we have lots of assumptions about things that happen all the time, sneezing and yawning and right, these things that are
Mhm.
like that. But that's usually where I start asking questions. It's like, what is that really? Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I definitely think that, it's important to look at the assumptions
Mhm.
and to say, that's what they say. That's what I read in this book. That's what they say. It's just a
Mhm.
common assumption. And a lot of times when I ask for guidance on those things, it's not
Yeah.
that. And so it's like, it's helpful.
Yeah.
It's like I usually
We're
get
just handing
guidance on.
us this information, and
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
like, well, it's what everybody else believes, and that's what they say. So, um,
Exactly.
when you
Totally.
say that's what they say, you're referring to spirit.
Absolutely. This host of guides that we've talked about, right? So when we
Yeah.
go through that list, Milru being one of them, and I'll ask
And the
specifically.
archangels and Yeshua and
Hmm.
Mary. And you'll ask specifically what? Who you're talking to?
Yeah. So I'll say, like, who do I ask this question to?
Oh,
And so,
good
it's a
to
way.
know.
Yeah. So it's like a pendulum technique to say, in my very original pendulum class, that was one of my questions. Who are you talking to? And the assumption in the class was higher self. And of course, I'm thinking, I'm at this level of development, so my higher self is definitely higher, but it's probably not as high as Yeshua, right? Or an archangel. So maybe talking to them might be even more helpful. And so when I started doing that, I started getting a lot clearer answers in the pendulum as well.
So how do you know? Like, okay, so let's say, excuse me, audience, I'm going to diverge for a second.
That's all right.
Um, I mean, for me, because I have like I think of all my clairs.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm kind of more. claircognizant. I mean, well, I do hear things, but
Yeah,
not. I mean, I think even sometimes I mistake my clairaudience for claircognizance.
makes
Like,
sense.
I'm
Totally.
not
Yeah.
really here. It's hard
Hmm.
to describe, but anyways,
Yeah.
so if I'm working with a pendulum and I want to know if I'm talking to Mary or Yeshua,
Yeah.
it would just I would I would I would hear it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
How did you discern who's talking
Yeah.
to you?
I was just, based on the assumption, I was saying, okay, now if we have an understanding of what chakra it is, and I can put whatever question I'm asking in a chakra, then I
Mm,
can have a general idea. Like if I'm dealing with a
mm,
physical health concern, then I'm going to go to Raphael and I'm going to say, "What do you think?" And then I'm going to ask Raphael, "Is there more guidance somewhere else?" So maybe Ascended Master, so maybe Saint Germain or Jesus or Magdalene or something like that. But I will definitely change who I'm talking to based on that guidance
mhm,
and I will get different answers. So actually, there is a way of understanding that these answers, although they all come from love, can show up differently in
mhm,
these different chakras. And
mhm,
so, physical health, relationship, Raphael predominantly, Yeshua, and then we get into some of the higher realm of angels. If I'm dealing with some clearing things, if is it clear in this space? Is my chakra system clear? I'll go up into Uriel or Gabriel. Specifically, I did a lot of my homework with Gabriel. So in my in my schooling, where I would just go through the paragraphs, is this Gabriel clear? This paragraph's good? No. Third sentence? No. Change it, shift it, still use it, move it somewhere else. So helping me write basically. And so kind of
mm.
having that understanding that Gabriel has been a part of writing a lot of the great books since the beginning of time. And so
Oh, okay. I have a bunch of questions. Now I know what your and I next session is going to be about.
excellent. I love
Cool. That's
it.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. So, does anybody, oh shoot, I haven't had the chat. Where is the
Oh,
chat? Nope, no questions. Okay.
all
So
right.
here's the deal, everybody.
Yeah.
Every two people or
I
anybody on the replay.
love
So
that.
if you have any questions, now's the time to answer them.
Hmm.
I mean, to answer them, to ask them. And then after that, I would like to reintroduce or maybe introduce
Hmm.
for people who may not have heard me talk about it before, something called the integrity process, which is
Hmm.
Kevin's body of work that he developed in conjunction with spirit, as he was just mentioning.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to introduce you to my new body of work.
Mm. Excellent.
And so, but before we dive into Kevin's integrity process and my divine guidance, intuitive guidance, and mentorship services,
Hmm.
if you have any questions, we'd like to take those first. So, whoever you are out there, if you have any questions, just let us know.
All right.
It looks like maybe not. Well, how about this? We'll go into this, and then if they have questions, we can find a
Perfect.
place to slip them in. So, um, Kevin, I took a course with you called the Integrity Process.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't talked to any of the other members of the group because that's not the way it worked, and I don't know those people.
Hmm.
But I bet they're thinking much like me, which is I would like to see this work spread.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and I know that you are in the throes of making
Yeah.
a website for it,
Yes. Hmm.
theintegrityprocess.com. Um, when you get that website all together, can we come on here and do a live
Yeah.
together? Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
okay.
Definitely. Yeah, I really think that what it's shaping up to be, the guidance and kind of the conventional wisdom that's happening out there in the world of the internet is membership. And so that we're going to kind of take this coursework and integrate it into a membership site. And then we're going to set some goals as far as how many people can be members and how you can interact in that membership world, so that it can be a podcast like this. It can be me just kind of chatting. I have an email that I send out, and we do that every Thursday. And the guidance back from that is, here's a couple of paragraphs on melatonin. And but we could do an hour or two or four on melatonin, right? So I mean, we could just deep dive into a lot of these different topics. And so that's, I think, what this membership site is going to be about. So that website will direct you to a membership site. And I do think that I'm kind of coming on board with that concept, that there are things that I like to be member of, and a community. So it's going to create a community of the integrity process. And then we can really start talking about the actual day-to-day practice of it, because it really does require a practice. It's not just something you can read in a book and understand, like, this is how I heal my trauma. And so, how I understand the trauma, first of all, how I work through the stages of relieving myself of it, where we put it, and how we then use these phrases of surrender and acceptance and forgiveness and gratitude and compassion. And so it really is, these stages of going through from the beginning of a traumatic experience, capital T, small t, and then working through the post trauma of that, getting to the post trauma growth. And that's kind of where we are energetically, I would say, in our communities of healing in this way, in regards to trauma, is that we can grow from these traumatic experiences. And in this way, the integrity process is, how do we integrate that traumatic experience into who we are today? And so that it isn't a pushing it away or getting rid of it. It is making it an integral part of who I am. And that's what I've realized in some of the major traumas that I've experienced, and how the pushing away takes so much energy, and how we go through all kinds of gyrations of reactivity and avoidance and addiction to push those things away. And then when we can come into this process, which is a natural process that we are, so it's not difficult to kind of describe this as we have said earlier. When I have emotions and they arise, I can express them, I can put them in the earth, I give them to the mother. And the beliefs, same. So mental body beliefs. And so we're talking three primary emotions would be anger, sadness, fear, and how I can literally take that, and literally meaning figuratively, so that I can take that, and using my imagination and using my experiential right brain, I can take that information and imagine it going into the earth, and the earth receiving those emotions, and knowing that that's what this thing that we live on is built to do. That it's built to interchange that energy of traumatic experience and emotional reactivity into it, and then to give me back usable prana, chi. And so that this work heavily relies on imagination and this experiential, so the experiential journey. And so this is very shamanic in that way. So it's using, but psychotherapy has used, imagination through visualization, through, right? So all of these techniques are in our modern science as well. And we're just really encouraging, I have anger and I need it to go somewhere else other than here. And so what do? I can express it, but if I express it at a person or a thing or an animal, I'm going to get guilt back immediately. It's going to immediately refer back to guilt. And so what do? How do I use this gestalt or experiential process to put it into the earth? So I can be actual angry, beat a pillow, I'm angry. Or I can just sit quietly in a meditation and visualize my anger as the color red, and that color red going into the earth and transmuting and coming back. And we use these words, right? Transmute, to transform, to transcend. And so these are the different chakra sets as well, that we're essentially moving up the scale: transmutation lower, and transformation middle, and transcending upper. So yeah, so there's a lot of content here in the classwork that we've done, and there will be a continuation of that for sure. We're going to take that into the world of how we communicate better, How do we actually connect with humans? And how do those two things, communication and connection, come into a place of creativity? So that's another place that we're going to teach from.
Yeah.
And then these phrases, like you talked about, are, this is where, when I put that emotion to the earth and I put this belief, and we didn't say that, I don't think, but the beliefs are not fair, not enough, and abandonment. And when we take those and give them to this Father Sky, imagining starlight coming through us, imagining any way that we're interrelating with this sky energy, and then allowing those beliefs to transform into new beliefs, that everything comes back into integrity, and I am always enough when I'm connected to my source. And when I'm connected to my source, there is no abandonment. It's not real. It is an illusion of my separateness. And so that's where we can come to that place of those two things, mental, emotional. And then we work forward to the I surrender and I accept. So then these phrases basically come into play, and we did different classwork on each one of those phrases and what they meant. So that's really the encouragement. And I'm very passionate about this work. I really think that it is transformative and transcendent and all those good words that we just used.
So to recap, the integrity process is you're coming into awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You're working with your emotion. You're working
Mm-hmm.
with your belief,
Mm-hmm.
and you are coming into acceptance and acknowledgement. Or are you surrendering before that?
Surrender first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
surrender.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
emotions, beliefs,
Yes.
surrender,
Mm-hmm.
acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
acknowledgement if you don't if that doesn't resonate, and then
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forgive
which
myself.
means to forgo the body chemistry, so it's not looping and looping and looping over in
Mm-hmm.
your central nervous system.
Perfect.
And then compassion, or am I missing one?
Gratitude. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's this
Gratitude,
one,
and
right?
then
So,
compassion.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Then we come
Okay,
back
so
into the heart with compassion. Yeah.
emotions, belief, surrender, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
compassion.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but there's a lot more to it, you guys, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. I also wanted to ask, the membership thing sounds good, but what I was really hoping is that will a person be able to access that and take the course like I did, like
Yeah. Totally. Mm-hmm.
watch the 7 videos and
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
and
Definitely.
8 videos, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because it would take you forever to get what you got in those videos if you were just visiting the site and having conversations with you every once in a while. Like it's
Oh yeah.
better if
No.
they have the actual framework. My
Totally.
friend
Definitely.
Laura Jonah would really like to take it.
Ah, nice. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've gotten some really good feedback, and I do think that it's moving more out into the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that, this is the way that we can definitely interrelate with the material. So it'll give us that ability basically to practice and then go back into community and say, hey, this is what's happening to me, where I'm still feeling abandoned. And I'm still feeling as though the world is separate from me, that I'm separate from source. And what can I do with that? And so this is because it's so practice based, that having a basic meditation practice is helpful. It's not necessary, but it's helpful. Just having a time that you set aside for this kind of self-reflection is really important.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
that work is, I mean, I continue to listen to the videos and
Great.
take notes and put it into practice. One day, recently, I don't remember the issue I was having or working with, but I went through the whole process, like in
Excellent.
order, in a matter of
Great.
minutes.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. That is
Um,
excellent. That's really possible. I mean, this is what we want, is practice, so that you can get good at this, so that somebody says something to me and I'm challenged by it. It's starting to create a trauma. starting to create reactivity, and I can, even in the moment with these tools,
Yeah.
essentially start to regulate myself and come back into a regulated state, where
Cool.
I could, even in that momentary process, I can deliver back a message that would be something like, well, that was unkind. I say this a lot, like, whoa. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like, being confronted with something and then just having a response that's neutral. I'm
Mhm.
not pushing back. I'm just going, whoa, that was a lot.
Yeah.
So, these kind of comments that we don't normally have the process to go through because we're in a reaction,
Mhm.
where we may say something also angry back, something sarcastic. We can really start regulating that process and becoming more responsive and less reactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I've been working a lot lately with I just get tired all the time, you know.
Hmm.
And I know it's me pushing against something or not allowing something in,
Hmm.
and
True.
so there's definitely more work. And then the other thing I've has been going on for years, and it just becoming more evident every day to me and to the people around me, that I just need to lighten up. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
too, I want to say fucking,
Yeah.
fucking serious all the time.
Right.
And it's really taking the joy out of my life because,
Yeah.
and it does have to do with trauma. It has to do with
Mhm.
one trauma, three traumas that happened within 8 years that
Yeah.
haven't been uncovered, and I need to work this process with it.
Yeah.
But I think about who I was before then,
Hmm.
and my demeanor and my capacity for laughter and my capacity to light up a room. And
Hmm.
I was also on someone's show the other day,
Oh,
Dr. Joe
awesome.
Delaney, and I watched it back and I was like, oh my God, I'm so serious. And
That's great. Good. Good.
it's good that I can laugh about it, but it's also really makes me very sad that I am so serious.
It's really
Um,
true. It's, these
I
out
just
of balance, reactivities. Like, I tend to be over, right, humorous. So I use humor basically as a way to, work with difficult situations. And so I
yeah,
tend to go the opposite direction of
yeah,
seriousness.
yeah.
And, but I see a lot of great spiritual teachers that I respect that kind of see the absurdity of life. And
Mhm,
that's one way to kind of confront the seriousness that this
yeah,
is a pretty absurd thing that we're doing, these human lives.
yeah,
So I do kind of tap into that, like, what are we doing here? Seriously,
yeah,
it's, when we put it in the context of I'm learning, that's helpful. I've made contracts. I'm here to do very specific things. Those are helpful things, but I
yeah,
definitely think the lightening up
mhm,
would change the world, right? There's a very serious world that we live in,
yeah,
and people very attached to their beliefs. And this is another way to kind of soften our attachment to beliefs, where, this is the kind of that response of, that's interesting, like real curiosity, like authentic curiosity. Like, if somebody has a very different belief than me, that's usually how I meet it. I get this kind of reaction first with, like, I'm right, and this is how it works. This is the guidance. Why are you questioning that? And then I go, like, that's super curious. Like, tell me about that. So that's how I'm able to do my work in the world. It's like, wait a minute, you're questioning the guides. And then I soften it up, and it's like, well, that's what I do to them all the time. So I'm always questioning them. So
yeah,
I do think that,
yeah. Well, and I want to, before I discuss my work,
yeah.
I want to say too that it's not. Okay, so like everything, it's co-creation. Your work is co-creation between you and the guides. So it's
Yes.
not just like, it's not always like, oh, the guides just said this. It's like,
Hmm.
no, the guides said this and I didn't fully understand this. So
Hmm.
then I was led to this book or led to this website or led to this or had this experience. So it's
Yeah.
what they're saying in tandem with what you're researching or what you know
Hmm.
from your real life experience, or what you don't understand at first that
Hmm.
unfolds for you later,
Totally.
and you see
Absolutely. Hmm.
why it's
Yes.
because I know things that, you and the guides can be way ahead of the curve, and you'll tell me something and the proof for it doesn't come out for like 3 years. I even
Absolutely.
helped you
Yeah.
find something once. Remember that video
Uh,
about the scientist
yeah.
who was saying, hey guys, what you think is always candida isn't always candida, and here it is. And you had already
Mhm.
told me about that like 3 years
Yeah.
later, and I found it and I was like, oh my God, I have to send this to Kevin. So
Absolutely. That was
yeah.
great. Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
So, Kevin, I guess right now I would like to have you as my witness. So, you and I
Excellent.
keep saying that we've been working together for
Hmm.
5 years, but actually, I think it's going on 6 now.
That's awesome.
And it's not like, okay, so here's how the anybody watching now or on the replay, here's how my mentorship with Kevin works. So,
Mhm.
first of all, he's not my guru. Are you my guru, Kevin?
I am not.
No, you're not my guru.
No,
And
no.
besides you being my mentor, who else are the teachers that I'm working with when I work with you?
Primarily Uriel, right? So Uriel is a very strong guide with you. And so, but we use Raphael a lot in this kind of second chakra work that we do. So, we're determining essentially, where we're working. And so, where is the mentorship? And then who's that mentor? So who is the guide that basically is best to help? And so I think that's, and we've gone through several of these, but I think that, this is where, that's kind of the personal touch of this work is we can say who's the ancestor, who's maybe the genetic ancestor too, like who's the mother, grandmother, right? So that kind of thing. So we can
So
also
you
do that.
say Uriel, and I don't mean to put you on the spot in front of the
Yeah.
audience, but that's the
Yeah.
first time I've ever heard that. You
Yeah.
you often talk about Gabriel a lot. So
Yeah.
Is Uriel new in my life?
No, this is basically the idea of the construct that I see as creating or manifesting. That's one of the words we use. Is that the intentions go to Uriel, and then so the system, as I see it, is goes to Uriel, goes to God, goes to oneness, source, and then comes back to Gabriel, and Gabriel delivers the messages. And
Mm.
so, right, so Gabriel is that, like I said with my homework, right? So Gabriel is the one that's delivering the message. And so a lot of times these are the two entities, Uriel and Gabriel, that work kind of in conjunction to receive the message, translate it. Always the message from source is love. So that's basically, so it comes back from source as love, and then Gabriel translates it back into, like through our process, into this is what you need to know at your stage of development right now. So that's a way to think about those two guides basically, but six chakra.
So
And
Source is communicating with Uriel, who's
mhm,
communicating with Gabriel, who's communicating with me. And
yeah,
actually, sometimes Gabriel sends me messages through Archangel Michael.
I like that because Michael down in that second chakra.
Remember
Yeah.
when he gave me that? I told you I got uh, that an angel handed me a book and it had light coming off of it, and they
Mhm,
handed me a book and a pen,
yeah.
like here, right?
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, you were like that message was from Gabriel, but he gave it to you through Michael for some
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah. Just a translator, just like a step down.
Yeah.
So I
Why?
think of it
Why?
like this kind of, it's like this corporate environment, right? There's all these different levels. And so, right. So it's like, I'm going to give this to here and here. And, it's another way because, that's what these chakras are doing is translating information. And so essentially that's like, if we think of it, like if I'm getting messages directly, some people will say directly from source. And that's why I kind of simplify that too. If you're getting messages directly from source, it's love. It's just that's it. And so is it love? And so then the translation would be more about what's going on with me, my trauma, my chakra system, my physical health. So then it can kind of love translates into take cysteine, right? So then it comes through Raphael to me as L-cysteine is the supplement you need as the building block for glutathione. That basically is the building block for, right? So that's where, it can come into a very practical place. And so that doesn't start up top. It basically just comes into this really, you know, this very physical place where I can get guidance of this is what the supplement I need to take today, or I drink this juice or do this thing, or right. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, that's my goal is to make this world practical so that I can say love. So basically, then it would just be a whole session of love, 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 which we do a lot. but
Well,
but then
and then
coming into
you
yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You finish.
Mm, mm. Oh, just that we're coming into that more practical place. Yeah, so that we can get steps for you. That's the
So,
mentorship.
Uriel, that was the first time I'd heard that. So then, or either I blanked it out or wasn't open to hearing it
Hmm.
before because it's my first time I'm consciously hearing it. So, but
Excellent.
you've
Good.
also said Ariel in the past.
Hmm. Mother Nature, right? That's kind of how I think of Ariel. And a lot of times Uriel and Ariel, because they're similar names, all these ILs, right? So they get confused. But I think that Ariel is often overlooked as this is our connection to nature. You know, when you see that picture of Mother Nature, that's this angel. That's Ariel. Like when I'm flying on a plane, I was flying back from Dallas just recently, and the air was pretty rough. And I ask Ariel, can you smooth out the air? Now, what is really happening? Can you communicate to the pilot, co pilot, that we need to move to some different air? Now, they probably know that they are pilots. And so, right. But this is where the plane can move in its elevation and the air is clear. Or
Or
is it
is
really
it
me
really me
just
just
asking Ariel for help and she smooths out the air? I don't know. But either way, it works. And so when I reach out and ask this nature or the entity that communicates with the elementals.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just another way to kind of be more practical with Ariel and how Ariel is like with the Fae. So basically the Fae people, right? This is that, that whole world of the unseen nature world, which would be that subphysical world in our chakra system.
Mhm. So, when we've had meetings together, has Mother Mary ever showed up, or Anna,
Mhm.
grandmother of Yeshua, or Mary Magdalene, or
Mhm.
Yeshua ever showed up?
All of them. Yeah. So basically, and that's kind of why I say, like, when you're using a pendulum, it shifts and changes. And so basically, that's, like this work would be Gabriel, right? It's me sharing out into the world. It's you sharing you out into the world. And so that's, if we had questions about this podcast specifically, that's where I'd go. But I definitely, like one of the practical ones would be the Divine Mother and how the Divine Mother is the one that works with when I clear houses, I use the Divine Mother energy and also money, which is really interesting. And so, this is where when I'm asking questions directly about money, then what is the entity? Like, should I buy this one or this one? It's often the Divine Mother that will answer that question. And there was a dream, let's see, that was Thursday night, and I just went to sleep. I always usually go to sleep with a question: how do you win the lottery? And the dream that came through was, uh, don't forget 226. I haven't figured it out yet. So we'll give you that in the audience that. Don't forget 226. And so I've kind of done a few explorations of it to see what that actually means, but there's something in relationship to that number sequence and how to be in alignment with winning the lottery or the mega millions. Or, it's just high right at the moment. So this evergreen thing that may not be true at the moment, but it is always an interesting process to say. I had a question from a client like, I want to win the lottery. It's like, I've never really asked how to do that. And so let's figure it out. So
That's
just
cool.
another one. Yeah.
So, so you are a mentor, not a guru, and when I'm getting instruction from you, like, hey, now's a good time to be using this essential oil, or
Hmm.
here's a good breathing exercise for you this week or this month or
Hmm.
whatever. And
Yeah.
we've been going on and on like this for 5 or 6 years. And
Yeah.
I've seen change in me. You've seen change in me.
Absolutely.
You definitely say that you see and feel less anger there.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
I've noticed I also am facing my fears or doing things that are scary to me,
Hmm.
even in the face of my fear, like doing this channel or having my blog
Totally.
or doing
Absolutely. Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
that's also utilizing my creative energy. I
Hmm.
wasn't doing those things before. Um, I'm not in an unhealthy relationship. I'm not in any relationship except with me
Hmm.
and
Which is an
spirit.
important one. Absolutely.
So anyways, there's a lot of things that have changed, and you can see my growth, I can see my growth, spirit can see my growth.
Absolutely.
And so often in my work with you, I ask, like, what is the next step?
Hmm.
Or spirit might offer to you to say, hey, this is the next, they're saying this is the next step.
Hmm.
And also, apologies to the audience, I put a ticker tape up that was supposed to be for myself earlier, and it was from the last guest, Celestial Beings, book by Cindy Bentley. But anyway,
Awesome. All right, Cindy.
that's another here nor there. So what I'm being called to do now is to put myself out there as a mentor or a transformational catalyst or an intuitive guide.
Hmm.
And I didn't just wake up one day and hear that in my head. It actually happened during a session with you
Good.
where
Yes.
they said, okay,
You ready?
this is what they want you to do.
Yeah.
So um
Hmm.
so who do you remember who was present when you told me that? Who was talking to you telling me that now it's time?
Yeah, it's definitely Gabriel, but I would say Yeshua. So I say Yeshua because this is the name from our history, Jesus, right? So Jesus, we know that name as well. So the ascended master, and usually that mastership is both Magdalene and Yeshua. So these two entities are ascended masters, mastress, mistress, right?
Mhm.
But I think logically we say master, but
They're the Shiva and the Shakti,
it's absolutely true.
the feminine and the masculine of
Yes.
the same entity, the
Absolutely. And
same
so
energy.
they're not going to say that to you if you haven't reached a level of development where you can blend those energies, where you can literally do what we're talking about, bring that masculine and feminine together in your heart and hold enough neutral space that you can hold space for another. And that's essentially this work. And that's when they said I was ready. I certainly didn't feel ready. It's like you're a shaman for shamans. And so, what does that mean? Like I didn't barely even know what a shaman was, let alone a shaman for shamans. And so, but then sitting in Santa Fe and all these shamans are coming to me, including you. And so it's like, this is happening, right? This is really happening. I don't know how it's happening, but it is. And so this is where, yes, we remember that we've had these lifetimes, these Tibetan lifetimes. And so, does the teaching go back and forth, right? You're my teacher, I'm your teacher, right? It definitely does that. And so that's where, we're always meeting with somebody that's bringing to the party, right? That is contributing. And so it's being able to meet somebody where they are and move them forward developmentally. And we have definitely done that in our work together. And that's where, these ascended masters are saying, you can't learn this stuff and not share it. It doesn't work that way. And
Yeah,
so right. And then they
they're like,
just put you to work.
you've been coming to us, we've been giving you the goods, and now
Exactly.
it's time for you to go deliver the goods.
Totally.
So
Yes.
everybody, this is my next venture, and also I will say that I frequently have conversations with Anna, who is the grandmother
Yeah.
of Yeshua,
Yes.
and and what was I going to say about that? Oh,
Mhm.
gosh, I'm blanking out. Don't let me blank out now, Anna. But in any case, um,
You have to make
so
a session to find out, right? So this is where, right? You gotta
yeah,
look up Julie and say, I need to hear that thing about Anna. It really connected to
right.
that. Right. So that's
So
what it's about.
in any case, oh, I know what it was. I was having a conversation with Anna, and she said, now it's time for you to bring something from the formless to the
Mm,
form.
nice.
And this very much is congruous with who I am because,
Yeah.
you know, many moons ago, maybe like 3 decades ago, I wanted to have a store, like an import store,
Mm,
because I thought, well, how can I take everything I'm interested in and put it into a business? Well, I love to travel and I like cultures and all of this.
mm,
But after many years in retail, I was like, no way, I don't want to do that. They send you boxes and styrofoam and plastic, and
mm.
there's so much waste.
Yeah.
Um, and there's like material objects involved, and that's not the way I want to treat the earth. Like I don't want to make money by exploiting the earth, right?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so I always knew that eventually I wanted to have a job that was selling a service and not a good,
Yeah, nice.
right?
Yeah.
And so when she said, bring something from the formless into form, right?
Hmm.
That is bringing my experience that, of everything that I've learned
Yeah.
in these 55 years, and then my connection to spirit and my ability to
Hmm.
communicate with spirit and offer up to the world what you've been offering me.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously with a different stamp on it because I'm not you,
Yeah,
but in
absolutely.
the same wheelhouse,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, to the world. And
Yes.
so I asked what it should be named, and I was told divine guidance.
Excellent.
And so I don't have my own website now. I do, um, on my website called Creators of New Earth. I do
Hmm.
put myself out there this way there. But for anybody watching now or on the replay, what you would do to schedule an appointment with me is you would send an email to Red Lotus Blue Buddha at yahoo.com, and your subject heading would be divine guidance, and we'll take it from there. And
Love it.
payments would happen over PayPal. And then eventually, when I grow up like Kevin, I'll have my own website just for that. And I'll
Perfect.
have, Schedulicity or something like that where
Yeah.
people can schedule. But actually, the divine guidance was that I start this way and I
Yeah.
say 10% of whatever I earn every appointment until I have enough money to build a website. So right now,
Nice.
my website is creatorsofnewearth.com. And
Excellent.
that's where you can find my blogs, and that's where you can find the link to my merchandise. Um, I started a shop also called Creators of New Earth recently, where I sell right now there's only one graphic, and it says,
Hmm.
wherever you stand, fill that place with love.
Love that.
And you can get that on magnets and on t-shirts and on water
Nice.
bottles and totes and aprons, etc., for men,
Yeah.
for women, organic options, hoodies, all different colors of the rainbow. So, but in
Nice.
any case, so divine guidance is my new service, everybody.
I love
So
it.
if you're watching this video and do you believe that I'm the one you want to come to and have a conversation, again, you would reach me by sending an email to redlotusbluebuddha@yahoo.com. You can see it here in the ticker tape. And in the subject heading, you would put divine guidance. And the only reason that I'm even able to say these words today or offer this service is because I've been a good student under the tutelage of you, Mr. Kevin Snow, and also
Absolutely.
Spirit. So,
She comes highly
thank
recommended.
you so much.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yes. So I say right now, send an email to that email address and get some divine guidance because it is definitely life changing. And yeah, so I mean, this is definitely the work that we do. And where then might you end up here? Right? Because this is how it works. You learn the stuff and you share the stuff. And that's basically love. That's making the love and putting it out into the world and saying, this is what our job
Yeah,
is to show up and to be love
yeah.
and to teach the system that works the best to come out of our traumatic reactive place and live a life that we came here to live. So this is definitely the recommend.
And it's like it's like the League of Angels, right? It's like
Yeah.
people come for help,
Hmm.
they get the help, then they get recruited, then they get sent out into the field, then
That's
they
it.
get more people.
Yeah,
Those people
definitely.
get recruited. They learn how to do the work, then they go out in the field. So it's like, it's
Right.
this proliferation, and that's
It
what
is.
spirit wants. That's how it works. So
Absolutely. Yes. And it's just every day that grows. And we are living in a world where that is growing. We're living in a world where we're seeing a lot of media of, things that are not so great. And how do we interrelate with that? Love. We be the love. We be the change we want to see. And how do we do that? We learn how to do it. And so basically, this is the process of learning how to do that. And it is worth it. I say that it isn't easy, but it's worth it. So that's Kevin's quote for the day.
Nice. It isn't easy, but it's worth it.
Yes,
You need to
absolutely.
start putting some t-shirts out there too, Kevin.
I really want to. I do. This is definitely part of that whole membership idea and all that too. So
Nice.
it's, doing some of this stuff that really is in alignment, right? I mean, we could think of, oh, I put my logo on something and that's just merchandise, but it isn't. It's another way of spreading this message. It's another way of somebody looking at this cup and saying, oh, that means something to me. I worked with that. I did that work. I know that work. The integrity process is another one that I think, when they gave me, just like they gave you these words for your business, right? The integrity process, that was my first thing that I said was, Gabriel, that's a lot to live up to. And so, like you said, I'm a shaman for shamans. Now I'm the integrity process. It's like, all right, it's like, let's keep moving. So my job, I just keep showing up.
Yeah. Integrity is a big deal, and
It is.
it does mean to be integrated, as you said, and that's, I
Yeah,
believe, why it's the name, right? Because
absolutely.
these traumatic experience can fragment us, and then we're not
Totally.
whole and we're not integrated. So how
That's
do we
excellent.
become
Yeah.
reintegrated? How do we become
Mm,
integrated? Well, through the integrity process.
absolutely.
And integrity is a big word. I remember being on a qigong retreat, and the last day of the retreat, the instructor said, if you could just embody one quality for the rest of your life,
Hmm.
what would it be? And I actually chose integrity.
Excellent. Yeah. It really is. It's profound. And I think that's what we're doing here. That's why we go through this and talk about the stone and the oil and all those different things, because those are all things that integrate the chakra system so that we don't have this blown out third eye where we're getting all kinds of information and can't sleep and all of this. And so, there's a lot of people are experiencing that, and we can pull it in and basically pull it into a human life. This is who I am. And that passion and purpose conversation is part of this. That's where we talked about. And that's what most people that are listening to this have a passion and purpose to help people. And how do you help people? You show up, you meet them where they are, and you help take them to where they want to go. And that's essentially what this is about.
Hmm.
And I'm so excited for you. I think this is great. This is a great graduation into this world. So,
Yeah. And this is the
congratulations.
kind of stuff that makes me
Yeah.
happy. I was thinking yesterday, because I told you I've been just too serious for too many years. And
Hmm.
not that you've never seen me laugh or I don't know how to have fun, but
Totally.
it needs to be like my
Yeah.
blood rather than a
I,
moment every 2 days or something, right?
totally. Absolutely.
And I thought, well, Julie, what really lights you up? What makes you the happiest? And it's always
Mm,
communication with spirit, hanging out with
yes.
spirit, Mother
Hmm.
Nature. It's like, for
Yes.
me, nature and spirit and these kinds of conversations,
Hmm. Absolutely.
um, animals, children, good people. But
Yes.
it's spirit. Spirit's the thing that
Hmm.
does it for me. And a long time ago, I had a friend, and she was like, I can see you. She's like, people are gonna call you on the phone, and that's gonna be
Nice.
your occupation. This was like over a
Yeah.
decade ago, and I was like, okay.
I
And
love
then
that.
for a while, I entertained the idea, and then I was like, "No, I guess it's not gonna happen," or something like that.
Yeah.
And now here we are, and I've reached that that point, and it's just, I don't
Yes.
know.
You're here.
That was supposed to tie in somehow with the humor and the.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely. I mean,
because this
yeah.
was what I need to say is, you and I had a talk about co-creation, because I said, well, like,
Hmm.
what does spirit want me to do next? And you're like, well, it's really a co-creation. And I've been thinking of this, like,
Yeah, good.
spirit. Okay, so when you connect to spirit, like, obviously, if you say to source over and over again as a prayer, which I have been saying since I was practically a kid,
Yeah.
like, I want to be an instrument of love, like, I want to help source do its work, right? And so I had that intention.
Hmm.
And so source is saying, okay, well, that's what she wants, so we're going to give her that. But it's
Hmm.
a co-creation.
Yes.
Because what source does is they see what lights you up,
Yes.
what you're passionate about, and
Hmm.
they say, okay, well, we're going
Yeah.
to use this person to
Yeah.
express love through, and this is how we're going to co-create. We're going to support them
Excellent.
and support them promoting love through what lights them up.
Hmm.
And if they go in the direction of those dreams, we're going to continue to open doors and present opportunities and make sure they have a roof over their head and they're taken care
Yeah.
of and they're
Exactly.
protected
Yes.
because they are doing the work of love. So it
Yes.
is this co-creation. Like spirit
Absolutely.
isn't going to ask you to go make a vocation of something that you hate. And that's why if
Exactly.
you have a job that you're miserable at, it's really hard to be standing in love and to be a
Hmm.
channel for source. It's like, okay, source might teach you something by saying, okay, you know what? You are going to have to wash dishes for a minute, but only
Sure.
because it's a lesson along this path, right? It's not going to say,
Hmm.
no, you have to clean out
Right.
horse stalls for the next 50 years if that's not where your passion lies, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I
And
don't
it's
know
an
if
important piece of, like you
you
said, with
froze.
roof over your head and all of that, right? So it really is an important piece that the money comes from sharing your gift, from sharing your passion. That's where it shows up. I am a complete example of that. That's what I asked early on in this work, that I want you to do this so that I can tell people, if I can do it, so can you. Yeah.
Okay. I'm waiting for it to unfreeze so we can have a proper closure.
Oh, okay. I got it's
Okay.
unfrozen on my end, but
Oh. Well, I'm not frozen on my end, I'm sure it's my internet connection.
oh, okay.
Throughout the video, you have frozen.
No, okay.
So, okay, you're back.
We're back.
And now you froze again. I've been having this problem, everybody, on this internet. I think it's just by virtue of where I live, you know? But
Sure.
so what I
Definitely.
did is
It's Zoom. It's how it works. So this would be, similar to that. It's this online interface. It says, no. We can do that. Well, it's not coming back.